Okay, so we're doing the two star-crossed lovers of League of Legends who have been cruelly unable to bang for years. Truly a travesty. Going forward, I will be using champions who aren't in this video to scale these two, since they would scale to them. And while I don't mention him very often in this video, Tarek would scale to everything in this video. I'll make Tarek a very quick video later. He has like nothing to work on his own. So right off the bat, let's get physical strength out of the way. These two have fucking nothing in terms of physical strength. Like, good lord, it's like a fucking desert out there, and we haven't even hit Shurima yet. This is going to be based off of scaling because, unfortunately, again, none of them have any physical strength feats. And as far as I could tell, no one else they scale to has any real physical strength feats either. The best I'm going to go with, really, is just something that Versus Battle Wiki has. So, according to Versus Battle Wiki, she should be able to lift somewhere in the range of 100 to 1,000 tons. I just want to point out for the record, she should maybe scale the Galileo, since during her story it stated that one of the characters hits with the force of a stone titan. Titans seem to be massive creatures in League of Legends lore, but there's no real information about them beyond that point. So based off of just word of mouth, you could scale her higher, maybe to even Malphite, but whatever. Lifting strength's not really going to matter here, or physical strength directly. She basically enhances her own abilities. Diana scales directly to this as well, since they are equals to each other. Moving on to speed, I mentioned this to some extent, but this can get pretty weird depending on the scaling, just like this script is already pretty weird because I did not mention that earlier on. So right off the bat, let's get the lightning statements out of the way. In the story, I have the Watcher. We learned that the Iceborn can react to lightning speed attacks, and then a statement later on claims they can react to something that is referred to as impossible speeds after that. Most Iceborn are weaker than Ascended, being considered a lesser tier type of human, so any Ascended and anyone amped would scale higher. Their gods are comparable to weaker Ascended as well. There are statements confirming that Aatrox, even before he became a Darkin, was able to kill the Fereldian gods who scale above the Iceborn, so there's no problems here. Next, we have the more obvious things on the table, the light speed stuff. Leona is empowered in the embodiment of the sun, so her being light speed should be fair game, since, again, she embodies all the aspects of it. However, since that's not good enough for some people, we do have some things to work with. There are calculations for her ultimate ability, Solar Flare, being calculated to massively faster in light. However, this is under the assumption Runeterra's sun is a similar distance away as our real sun is, well, from Earth. So when she calls down the beam, it moves at massively faster in light. All of her light-based attacks should scale to that speed, and I believe that's also stated to be the thing she blasts out of her armor during the Diana fight, so Diana directly reacts to these attacks and scales as well as a result, which just helps more with combat speed. Quick update on that speed section for the massively faster in light. It's referred to, the attack is actually called Sunfire, or it's referred to as Sunfire in Leona's color story, and during Diana's bio, it is confirmed that they were, fighting with Sunfire and Moonlight. Again, all of Diana's attacks directly scale to Leona's. They're equals to each other. They have consistent statements being the same source of light, or embodying the same light as Aurelian Soul puts it. So, yeah. Next, we're going to get on to the more crazier stuff, which is void creatures exist and move outside of linear time, which should be infinite to inaccessible speed, since normal time doesn't really affect them at all, or more accurately, they can move and exist outside the speed formula, which basically gets you inaccessible to infinite speed, just by virtue of existing in that area, moving like that. But we do have something more concrete to work with as well. We get evidence from Zoe from a direct line Legends of Runeterra, where she states time moves slowly. I will have the actual clip in the video. Zoe does state in the biography that the aspects are like her, and they can also move in the spaces between dimensions, so Diana and Leona should scale. Once again, this should scale Tarek as well. So this should definitely, now to be fair, they scale, but only when they're empowering themselves with their aspects, which is whenever they fight. This is confirmed in Leona's color story that she has to choose to empower herself, since she's holding the aspect back a lot of the time. In terms of durability, they should scale to AP. While we do see that the void creatures that Diana fights are able to hurt her pretty easily, they are from the void, and they are able to threaten the aspects and other creatures that exist there. So any void creature is also technically a higher dimensional being, potentially, or at the very least exists outside the normal rules of reality, since the only thing that can really hurt void creatures are specific magical abilities or powers, or things of the celestial realm's nature. So there's no real anti-feat there with void creatures hurting them. Also in Leona's color story, while she does get knocked back by the brute that she's fighting, it doesn't really hurt her at all. And even then, she is holding back her aspect's power significantly, because the aspect just wants to burn everything in vicinity, and she is holding back its power. So you could just argue she's holding back. In terms of AP, things are going to once again get very complicated, so we'll start small and work our way up the totem pole. The first one we'll be going over is how they're scaled on VSB once more. since that's going to be the lower end, even from where I scaled him to on a more moderate level. Versus Battle Wiki has her at small country level due to Ascended, again, referring back to the Aatrox thing I mentioned earlier, being able to kill Fereldian gods before becoming a Darkin, which would scale to all the other Ascended, and the Fereldian gods have small country level scaling, and also I think due to cleaving apart like the Freljord and making it, and also because of the way the oceans fell when, if I recall correctly, Ornn's Forge was made. Let me confirm that real quickly. Never mind, quick correction. The feat that gives him small country level, or at least small country level on VSB, is they created a storm that could be seen 10 horizons away, which according to calculations gets him to small country level. So that's like the lowest end you could scale Leona to. Now, I'm a simple man. A character can call upon the power of the sun and can be empowered by it directly, and can literally just call down a focused beam from the sun. Mook can seemingly move it at will based on the color story, and again, can just focus its power into her abilities and literally just call down directly like fucking Death Star laser beam. I'm gonna go ahead and call that character star level. They can literally just control sun willy-nilly and fucking fire giant lasers down from it. Call me a simple man, but I think that's fair. Now, thanks to Diana's color story, we also know that she can call upon we know Diana can call upon the power of other moons in space, not just the one from Runeterra. So, since Diana and Leona embody the same light, this should mean that Leona can also call upon the power of other suns. So, she wouldn't just be star level with her AP, she would be at least multi-star to solar system level, if you just assume, like, basically being empowered by the suns directly and being able to call upon them would, like, fucking give you star level, which to me is fine. Now, that's not too crazy, but don't worry, we can fix that. So, according to Zoe, only realities with less than 5 dimensions have space times. Zoe is a perfect merge beam with her aspect, but this means that aspects exist at least in the 5th dimension or a higher dimensional tier beyond 4th dimension. Zoe's lines also confirm that this would most likely be infinitely superior since she wouldn't be affected by space-time. Basically, like, actually all of reality, Zoe kind of makes it seem like it's just not real, so keep that one in mind. As a result, you could argue Leona and Diana would also be 5D at bare minimum when calling upon the aspects, as according to Diana interactions with Zoe, she's mortal, divine, and the moon itself. According to Leona's color story, she also can merge or allow the aspect to merge with her more completely, gaining directly the senses and perception of the aspect itself, or at least gaining senses and perception that are being affected by the aspect's abilities. So if the aspects are 5D and merging with them gave Zoe her stats, then this would also apply to aspects like Leona and Diana when they're merging with their aspects or calling upon the power. Once again, this will also extend to Taric as well. Just to clarify, this would not be like a this would be like them when they're actually seriously fighting. This wouldn't be them like casually just lying down somewhere sleeping or something. They would be normal humans at that point, but they can merge with the 5th dimensional beings during battle. Zoe's the only one who's always a 5th dimensional being. Okay, so now I'll be moving on to powers and abilities. Even though I did mention Taric and Zoe in this video and use them for some of the direct scaling, and by that I mean just Zoe, I will not be mentioning the powers and abilities in this video, nor which version of the character is the strongest among the skins for League of Legends Multiverse, so to speak. So they will get their own separate video later on. But again, if in case you're wondering, both Taric and Zoe, well, obviously Zoe for sure would scale. She's carrying half the higher end scaling, but Taric would also scale as well. And so should technically the other aspects, along with most of the other Ascended as well. But I'll talk about them in their own separate videos. So yeah, with that said, we're going to go over the powers and abilities of Leona and Diana, and then we'll just talk about what's the strongest, and then we'll be done. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the powers and abilities, and I will be going over them with the way they're written on Versus Battle Wiki, since they're nice and concise, and Versus Battle Wiki is usually fairly accurate with the powers and abilities. I'll mention anything they don't directly have here, and I'll try and like reference where these things directly come from. So let's go ahead and just continue from here. Superhuman physical characteristics for Leona. This is going to be apparent for both of them. Skilled sword and shield wielder. Pretty obvious. Sunlight-based attacks. Don't need to go into details there. Force field creation. This is, I believe, based off her W ability in the game. Can augment her physical and magical defenses. We already talked about that in the AP. Fire manipulation. Based off the sun. Non-physical interaction. Can hit intangible and incorporeal enemies. Was able to damage a Shadow Isle spirit. I have no idea where that actually comes from, and unfortunately with the way Versus Battle Wiki has their powers and abilities pages set up, it does not actually provide a link to the feat in question. However, I am aware that in Legends of Runeterra, a weaker Solari using the power of the sun is able to hurt and affect the spirits of the Shadow Isles, so Leona would obviously scale to that and be much stronger, so I do know that for sure. It should be worth noting that anything Leona can do or what she can hit should scale Diana and vice versa, in case, like, you know, there's not repeats here. Resistances to mind manipulation, memory manipulation, madness manipulation, perception manipulation, reality warping, spatial manipulation, time manipulation, gravity manipulation, existence erasure, biological manipulation, corruption type 2, absorption, and soul manipulation. Is based on being able to resist the effects of the void, because all aspects can fight the void creatures. Diana also fights in their story, and again, they would scale to each other. So the only thing they don't really have here is when she merges with her aspect, she does gain the abilities of like higher perception, and she's also able to see their soul to be more. Here, let me actually check, get their direct quote. Yeah, according to her color story, when she merges with their aspect, she's able to see their bloodlust directly and see like the red glow of their heart beating. So she does gain like other senses as a result of doing that. So that's like the only thing they don't mention here, which is fine. Now we're going to move on to Diana's section. Okay, so I just spent like the last half an hour trying to verify some of these things. I have no fucking clue where some of this shit comes from, but I'll go ahead and go through it anyways. Superhuman physical characteristics, expert swordsman, lunar magic, and soul manipulation. Since lunar magic has connections with the spirit realm, that was pretty easy to find, as the host of the aspect of the moon should be able to affect the spirit realm. This works for both characters. Again, nothing too crazy here. Energy projection, force field generation, light manipulation, can hit intangible and corporeal enemies. We went over that with Leona. Reactive power level, conceptual manipulation type 1, power nullification, and existence erasure. Moonfall can erase aspects to the point they are wiped entirely from all history, reality, and memory, as though they never existed in the first place. Moonfall burns the power within its targets, rendering them powerless as it erases them, and gets more powerful the more targets it hits. Okay. That's pretty fucking crazy. And I don't know where that comes from per se until I went through and like raked my brain during 30 minutes, and I was like, that has to come from Twilight of the Gods. That's a League of Legends story talking about the Ascendant of Shurima, where most of the Darkin, besides Rost, Aatrox, and them, basically devolved their power because one of them decided they're going to like, I'm going to stop this war, we're going to fucking end this. So let me try and explain this as best I can. This is going to be a little bit of a lore dive, but it does explain where this comes from. During Twilight of the Gods, one of the actual Ascended, let me see what his name is, I think it's Tanaria. I can't pronounce that, but one of the Ascended calls the other Ascended in to try and convince them to put an end to the Darkened War, or the war after Azir died. And they don't agree, so he decides to use the power of the moon to undo the Ascended. And it works. It like either obliterates them completely, erasing them, or it like devolves them as it does him. He becomes human by the end of it. He's lost his ascension. I believe his exact line is, whatever the sun made, the moon can undo. Never mind. What the sun made, the moon will unmake. And what we learn at the end is that we do get a statement that they'll need a different approach for dealing with the rest of the Darkin from the original aspect of Twilight, who is the one who erases Aatrox and everything from the world. So I'm going to be honest here a little bit. I don't know if they actually use the moon to do what they do to the Darkin, because according to Aatrox's bio, it was the aspect of war, and a force greater than 1,000 dead suns pulled him into the sword that he carried in the battle, which is what basically erased him from existence and such. So, right here we have the heavenly powers that Aatrox had once embodied had been wiped from the world and all memory. So, again, this is specifically what they're referring to, I think, with this Diana statement. Now, in fairness, while I did say that basically they share the same powers and abilities because they're consistently referred to as embodying the same light and basically being the same thing, just two halves of the same coin, you could maybe argue that Leona can't do this existence erasure or conceptual manipulation. Or, well, she would have conceptual manipulation, but she wouldn't have power nullification and existence erasure. You could argue that Leona, since she is the aspect of the sun, can actually create other Ascended the same way the Sun Disc does in Shurima. It's a cool thought, but it's more speculation. For now, we should assume Leona can do this as well, the power nullification and existence erasure. But keep in mind that that might not be entirely fair game for everything. That might just be in reference to things the sun makes. But I think generalizing it for now is fine. But so that's where the Moonfall thing comes from, for erasing things from existence. Rendering them powerless and getting more powerful the more targets it hits. That's in reference to a gameplay mechanic. But I think it's fine. It is like an actual gameplay mechanic that is used to show the coming of the ages. So I will try and have those scans up there. Possibly precognition, weapon creation. What? Healing, extrasensory perception, statistics amplification, statistics reduction, gravity manipulation, black hole creation, fire manipulation, status effect inducement. As the host of the aspect of the moon, Diana should have the same powers as Aphelios on the Loon, who derive their powers from the blessings of the moon. Yeah, that's fair, but we've never seen her actually do them. And to be fair, I believe a loon like actually has skill in that regard to do that. It's fine. I think that's a little bit leaning too hard into like what she could do. They should update Leona's page to say she can create more Ascended though. Riot, please confirm that. Resistance to mind manipulation, just the same shit she was doing in the Void. Mind manipulation, memory manipulation, madness manipulation, perception manipulation, reality manipulation, spatial manipulation, time manipulation, gravity manipulation, existence erasure, biological manipulation, corruption type 1, absorption, life force, matter, magic, and information, and soul manipulation, able to resist the full effects of the Void. Well, okay, this is a little weird because Aatrox is an Ascended and he basically got his existence erased too. So they do have resistances to it, but again, like maybe Diana is just specifically greater than like the Voids. That's entirely possible, or at least something along those lines. Since again, the Ascended from Shurima were made with the Sun Disc, which is technically, from what I remember correctly, Aurelian Soul's power, but it's technically based off the Sun. So maybe like because like Diana can counter like things from the Sun based on that statement, like we can just assume she would affect aspects more directly than other things. But so yeah, those are their powers and abilities. Again, for the most part, it should all scale to the other. Based off that weapon creation and stuff, we do know that the Solari can create weapons and imbue them with the sunlight, so Leona should have that as well. So by this lot, again, they should just share the same powers and abilities overall. If Diana can do it, Leona can most likely do it, and vice versa. The only thing maybe is the erasure of existence and the power nullification, but then you can just argue Leona can probably just like actually create other Ascended, but that's very hypothetical for Leona. For Diana, that's also potentially hypothetical, but I understand where the reasoning comes from. So yeah, now I'll just go over which skin line is the strongest, and then we'll be done with this video. Alright, so finishing out this video, going over the most powerful skins, I'm going to be honest, depending on the higher end scaling for Diana you can give her, her most powerful skin is probably just going to be Sentinel, only because it's based Diana with like the Sentinel weaponry, which would be more effective against ghosts and shit, but that wouldn't really affect too much of her abilities. But like that's the only one that actually would have the higher end scaling that you could potentially argue for. All the other ones are more grounded. Even Blood Moon Diana isn't technically evolved to her more powerful state, because Blood Moon is actually pretty strong as a verse, but Diana as she is hasn't really crossed that line yet, so that one wouldn't really be there, and the rest don't really have anything to offer. If we're gonna talk about the most powerful Leona skin, honestly, again, Lunar Eclipse might seem fair game, but unfortunately she doesn't really scale to any of the old gods, and even then the old gods don't really scale that high up right now, especially in comparison to what her potential standard aspect scaling would be. So that wouldn't really affect anything. Neither would Battle Academia or Mega Kingdoms. Honestly, Project is the only one you can maybe argue for, because Project seems to be the main League of Legends universe with humans who have been merged together with the machinery. So you could maybe argue that Project Leona is the aspect Leona, and would just have the Project advancements, which are just like a fucking sword that can cut through anything based on molecular structure. But that's about it. Again, like, if you argue for the higher end scaling for their base skins, most of these skins don't even come close to where their main universe skin lines can exist, or their main universe like character versions can scale to. So yeah, that's about it for the video. Thank you guys for your time as always. Have a nice day, and I'll see you guys on the next streamer video.